Good afternoon, everybody. It is Wednesday, December 1st, 2021, and don't even ask me how the heck it's gotten to be December already, because I have no idea, but it's happened way too fast. Anyway, it's 3 o'clock p.m., which means it is time for Women in Business. I am so glad you're here with me today. We have an amazing show. I'm really excited about this one. You're going to love it. My guest today is Nancy Minnie, and Nancy is Madeira USA's product marketing manager. Self-taught to run single and multi-head commercial embroidery machines, she problem solves, creates stitch outs for illustrating articles in trade press, and provides stitched color samples for large companies. As a product expert, she often leads internal product trainings as well as many Facebook Live presentations. She is Madeira's go-to person when products need testing and is often called upon to help customers overcome embroidery challenges within their businesses. And you can reach Nancy at nminnie@madeirausa.com. And I will show you all the Madeira links at the end. But I'm going to bring Nancy in here. Hi, Nancy. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, Christine. Thank you for having me.
Now, one of the things that I said to you before we started doing this is that I loved all the information you sent me, and you sent me so many good topics to talk about. But the first one that I want to start with is, I think I'm going to start with overcoming shyness, because I know that's something that happens that kind of stops a lot of women from being on camera. So I want to talk about that for a minute. How did you do that? Did you just decide it's part of my job, I have to do it? Or was there a process you went through? Or I know that's kind of open-ended, but
no, certainly so I'm an introvert by nature, but I think introverts and shyness, I mean, they tend to go hand in hand, but they don't really have to be. So I pushed myself really. When I think about my middle school, high school years, I always defined myself as a wallflower in high school because I didn't want to make waves. I didn't want anybody to look at me. I didn't want anybody to say anything. I was terrified. Had a few friends here or there, but really just did not get involved. I regret that now, but it is what it is at this point. So I did change that as I got older, and certainly with age comes wisdom for sure. And, you start thinking about, why am I this way and why can't I do things because I'm shy, And I have a daughter actually who's very shy as well, so much to the point where she was diagnosed with selective mutism. And she literally never talked in school until she got into her high school age. And one of her, I think it was her 6th grade teacher, took a real good interest in her, tried to help her and wanted to work with her. And she would even take her out with her daughter to go get ice cream and things like that. And when she dropped her off that day, one of the things that she said to me was that her daughter is also shy, but only at the beginning. And she said, the more you say something to somebody, the more they're going to believe it. So I was always told as a young person that I was shy. So I think it might have been instilled into me as a child. And then I also realized, well, my daughter's not actually shy. It's a little beyond that. But it taught me not to call her shy in front of people. And I think maybe that's where my shyness kind of came in. Yeah. Once you meet me, once I warm up to you, I'm probably not going to shut up. So I have a lot to say. So how did I overcome it? I think I just decided I didn't want to be shy anymore. I can remember the first webinar I did was in 2011. It was with Nate Moore from Melco, and it was on backing. And I think my voice quivered most of the way through it, which was kind of embarrassing. But once it was done, I felt pretty good about it. I'm like, okay, I can do that. I just need to relax a little bit. And one of the things that Nate told me that he did before he would do them back then, or when he first started, I guess, he said he used to go out in the back, out in the field or woods or whatever it was, and he would like just yell as loud as he could. And that would get rid of his anxiety before. I don't know that I would have been able to do that. I don't think I could have found a place where I felt like people weren't going to listen to me screaming and yelling. So I think the thing that worked for me the best was I literally just shook my arms and just shook the tension out of my body. And that seemed to help me a lot preparing for the webinars. And so with webinars, when we did those in the past, it was just my voice. It wasn't me on camera. So I feel like I did it in small increments. And I don't know. I guess I'm not really afraid to talk to people anymore like I used to be. I used to find people intimidating, and it wasn't maybe not so much what they did. It was just what I took from them.
I get that. Well, and I like kind of immersion therapy a little bit was almost what it was, is that you just started doing it. And I also like what you said about the first one that you did when you got done. You went, okay, I did pretty good. And then maybe later on you went, well, my voice shook a little. But the first thing you did was kind of support yourself and say, I did okay with this. And I think that's really important because I know, at least for me, I'm hypercritical of, well, we were talking about this before the show too. I'm going, I hate my face. I hate my hair. I think my face is too round. I think my necklace isn't hanging straight, blah, blah. And nobody cares about that stuff.
They don't.
Except me.
My shoulder's hanging off a little bit. So.
Yeah. And
see, then I did it backwards.
Oh, the camera kills me. I try to adjust my necklace and it never goes where I want it to go. But I love the idea of just kind of deciding that, okay, I don't really want to have this label anymore that maybe people gave you. And I also think that's a really good point, that people tell us that we're something. And, if you get told that you're shy, or you get told that you're awkward, or you get told that you don't speak well in front of people enough, you internalize that. So I think that's a really good point about being careful what we say to ourselves and what we say to others.
Yeah, for sure.
I really do. And I really am interested in what a difference that could make for some people if they were supported instead of being told, if they were told positive things instead of negative things.
Absolutely.
I think that's important. Well, I want to throw in a couple of comments here just because I always like to say hello. Hi, Cindy. Cindy says, good afternoon, all. Looking forward to the show, sewing and listening. Vicky says, good afternoon, Christine and Nancy. And Jeff says, I'm a pretty big introvert. It took me months before I could go on camera and even longer to be comfortable on camera. But I think the important thing is just, I look at where I started when I started the show, or the first, like you said, your first one in 2011. My first one was, God, I don't even know how long ago now. But if you would look at that one versus what I do now, it's an entirely different person.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important thing. But I love the immersion therapy approach to it, is just get out there and do it. And if you need to go stand out behind your house or whatever and scream before you do it. Well, or just.
Yeah, I live in a neighborhood, so I don't think my neighbors would appreciate that.
Yeah, I live in a condo development, so my neighbors probably wouldn't love it if I went and stood on my deck and went, ah! But
yeah. That's not really me. If I let things bottle up in me, I can definitely, let off a little steam here or there, but I'm much better at that now. Understanding, where I'm coming from, and, I don't know. I just can't say enough about positivity. And I try to be a role model here. We have a lot of young women here, and I feel like I've been here so long that, people they do come to me and talk to me, whether it's for customer help and just, issues work in our system, or, just all kinds of things. So I do a lot of internal training here, which certainly helped with that as well, overcoming that shyness. And
well, I love that, because you actually led me very nicely into another point that I wanted to talk about, which is another one of the things that you mentioned to me. Actually, two of the things that you mentioned to me, and now I'm having target confusion as to which one I want to talk about first. But let's start with this one. You you had children and you were out of the workforce, and then you started, I think you said in your mid 30s.
Yep.
You went to Madeira and you got a job, basically like entry level sort
Yep.
of job. And
Yeah, I don't
then
think there could be any lower level. I mean, technically, I applied for the warehouse because I'm like, well, I worked in retail. I worked with the warehouse, so how hard can it be to work? That job was taken, but the samples assembly and mailing became open. I mean, it was just very timely, and how I got in there. So.
But one of the raps that a lot of companies get is that it's hard for women to get promoted. It's hard for women to work their way up. So I guess the question that I have for you is, were you aggressive in saying, I want to move up, I want to do more things? And is that how it happened? Or was it kind of a natural progression or a combo?
Certainly a combination for sure. I mean, I had people pulling for me and, pushing me to do things. I'm thinking about it now. Probably one of the first things that I get asked to do beyond, putting samples together and mailing, which can be a little boring after a little while, but, touching every single product on a daily basis, preparing samples, looking at customers, what they're asking for and things like that. That it gave me a good background and
huge education.
Yeah, huge education, and that's one of the things that we do here at Madeira is huge education, whether it's internal or for our customers. And our products, every product we have has some sort of education around it, which, that's the basics behind your marketing. So I kind of lost. So the thing I got asked to do was to take over the trade shows and organize the trade shows. And it was everything from just signing up for the shows, ordering all the services, and putting everything together, packing everything, shipping it out.
Oh, that's a huge job. I've done it.
It is. It was huge. And then going to shows was not my favorite thing to do, but I did go to shows for a while, and I would go to the shows. I would set them up. I would break them down. And I can remember at the end, I don't know how old I was at the time, but I'm like, I just looked at the president at the time. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. It's just too much for me. Because it was just me. I mean, I could get help, and I did get help here and there, but it was my responsibility and I had to do everything. And it just got to the point where I'm like, I just can't physically do this anymore. So we had some younger people signing on, working with us, and they gladly took it over, started going to the shows. And it's definitely a young person's.
Oh, yeah. I did it for a number of years when I was director of marketing at Enmart, and I'm right there with you. I was like, yep, I can't do this stuff.
Yeah. It's
so
a lot. Yep. So that was I think that was my first kind of step up in the company, to take on that responsibility. And I come from, I feel like, a long line of, just really good work ethics. So even when I first started here doing samples, it wasn't enough work for me. I'm like, okay, what else can I do? It's like, okay, I can get this done in 4 hours, but I got 4 more hours of work to do. So I was constantly asking for stuff to do. And, I would do data entry. I can do, I take phone calls now. I can place orders. I can, pretty much can do just about anything except for accounts receivable and accounts payable. I've done shipping, I've done receiving and things like that. But that was definitely my first step. And then I had a really good director of marketing years ago who really helped promote me within the company and within the department itself. And then just recently, I was promoted to the product marketing manager. So that's very new. Only about a month. ago. I've been kind of doing it for half the products, and now
Right.
the opportunity to came up for doing it with all the products. So it's very exciting. It's been 21 plus years, and um, it took a while, but
Mhm.
you know, I now have about 4,800 products that I'm the manager
Wow.
of.
That's a lot of well, and I was just thinking, man, what a time to become product manager when there's all the issues right now with supply chains
There's issues? I
and
didn't know that.
oh,
Just
you didn't know that? Nobody told you?
no. I would have taken this position if I'd known that.
Yeah, I know. You might have thought about it a little bit more. But
Yeah,
the one thing
it's
that I love that about what you said was that you took the initiative to learn other things when you realize that okay, the job, there are people. I don't think you and I are in this group, but there are people who would have gone, "Hey, I can finish this in 4 hours, and then the other 4 hours I can be on social media and take a nap and play solitaire."
right.
As long as nobody catches me, who's gonna know?
No, I know. Yeah. Yeah, it's not in my blood. And I love watching. I have two daughters, and they both are super hard workers.
Mhm.
And I feel like my husband is as well. So I feel like we taught them very well, and am happy to see that they're both in jobs they like and they excel at, and they're not that employee that's over there on their phone
Yeah,
every 5 minutes.
I have never gotten that because 'cause I've never been that way either. I'm always like, if I'm there and you're paying me to do something, I'm gonna give you more than the value
Yeah.
of the paycheck that you're paying me because I just don't understand that. But I do wanna read one comment here from Vicky because this is long, but I think it's good. Vicky says, "I took several classes geared toward helping people with autism learn to improve their social skills. One segment focused on how a large segment of the general population struggles with starting conversations with strangers and how that struggle is even bigger for people on the spectrum. It completely changed my perspective and enabled me to strike up a conversation with just about anyone despite my insecurities and shyness." I love that because, first of all, figuring out how to talk to people and then realizing that most people are as scared to talk to you as you are to talk to them.
Definitely. And, if you're in the grocery line or something like that, and, sometimes you can just
Mhm.
make eye contact with somebody, and, it's like you have a shared empathy for, here we are standing in line again, waiting, or there's somebody in front of us making a big deal about something. And then,
Mhm.
those are kind of the conversations I like that, we just kind of chuckle and laugh. But, normally, I would barely look at somebody, 20
Mhm.
years ago, 20, 30 years ago.
That's the funny thing. And this is a question that I didn't really plan on asking, but I would guess that we're probably roughly the same age. Um, I'm finding now, I'm 52, and I'm finding now that I am more confident and more willing to talk to people now than I was when I was in my 20s or my 30s. And I don't know if that's because I have more experience under my belt or if I don't care what people think of me anymore. Have you found that with yourself too?
Absolutely. It's true. They say with age comes wisdom. I mean, you've lived life,
Mhm.
and yeah, when you were 21, you thought you'd live life and everything. And you know now that you didn't. We are
Mhm.
close to the same age. I'm 57. Um, so yeah, I mean, you just I don't know. And then, even, to go back to high school and things like that, I'm living in the town where I went to school. So I do run into people here or there that I went to school with. And, somebody who I didn't, wouldn't even dare look at in high school, you
Mhm.
can talk to them and have a conversation. And they were just as scared and, confused as you were in high school.
Well, one of the things that someone said to me once that really just hit home because I was raised with the whole "what will people think" kind of ethos, if you do this, what are people gonna and somebody looked at me once, and I don't even remember who at this point, and said, "Nobody's thinking about you half as much as you think they are." Honestly, nobody's that interested. And that was, and it was a little disappointing because you want everyone to be interested in what you're doing. But at the same time, it was very freeing because I didn't have to worry. I could just do whatever I needed to do.
Right.
So I do think, and that's something that I do tell younger women sometimes, is that, a lot of the stuff that you're worrying about now, when you get a little older, you're not going to worry about it the same way, because you just get to the point where you're like, this is who I am, and you either like me or you don't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you don't,
you don't deserve to know me.
There you go.
Move on.
But that
absolutely.
brings me to another topic of conversation that I wanted to broach here, which is the bit that you said about mentoring or advising the younger people who work at Madeira, which I totally love. And this is something that I'm very passionate about, is helping younger women and the next generation get their feet under them, or, sharing my experience or whatever. So I'm assuming this isn't like a formal program. This is more.
It should be. It probably should be, but no, it's not right now. But who knows? It could be down the road. But yeah, I mean, we had 2 younger ladies within our marketing department. When I say younger, anybody in between 20 and 30, I mean, they're just so new to even just working. If they just got out of college, they're in the working force at 25, 24, 25. And just to help, I think it's more important to be a role model, or, lead by example. And, one of the things I did mention that my dislikes are moody people, because, I don't know who I'm dealing with today, because, and I understand it. I have, everybody has their struggles and their stresses.
Sure.
And I don't believe that it belongs in the workplace. Yeah, you don't want to come in with a fake smile, but you do, as you get older, you have to learn, or you should learn, how to leave that at home so that you can do your job to the best of your ability. So, I don't know, maybe everybody thinks I'm just happy-go-lucky all the time, but the people I'm more closer with, I might, do a little venting here or there. Venting's good, but, all things are good in moderation. But I certainly, people should be approachable, whatever you are within a corporation or a small business, or, whatever it is, and that's what I try to give off, I guess, and hopes. And if I'm having a conversation with one of them, because a lot of times I do one-on-one trainings internally, and especially when people are new, they'll sit with me for hours, and it gets a little boring talking about products the whole time. So we do talk about ourselves, I should say, and you get to know people, and you hope that they're that you can be a good example for them to follow.
Well, I one of the reasons I brought this up is because this is you're hitting a lot of my hot buttons today, I guess. But another one of mine is that I really think it's important that women who have reached a place of authority in the industry, or have been around for a while, share what they know and help other women get started and answer questions. And a lot of the time what I hear is, oh, I don't really have the time. I don't really, which is fair. But at the same time, I think it's important, because we need to be, like you said, we need to be the role models that maybe we didn't have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's important.
Right. And, not so much on the personal side, but it really is a big part of my job here, is to train and share my knowledge. And I'm happy to do that. It's only going to help them. And it's especially true. We have a pretty large call center here, which is really a customer sales and support, is the name of the department, because we're not just taking calls. We're fielding questions and we're helping
Right.
the customer. Because, you've been in the industry, I've been in it a long time, and there are just so many variables within embroidery, all the things that have
Mhm.
to come together to create a, beautiful project, embroidered. I always think of embroidery as more artwork. I very
Oh, I
rarely
agree.
wear something embroidered, but I have so much embroidered things framed and hung up around
Mhm.
the building here. It's ridiculous. But, out in the real world, it's corporate logos and,
Mhm.
mostly, your uniforms, your restaurants, whatever. That's what a bigger part of it is. And it's, there's no secret recipe to success for one job that's going to carry over to the next job, to the next job, to the next job. So we are constantly, helping our customers choose the right product, um, so that they can be successful.
Right.
And I'm assuming that you've seen it or heard about it within the industry. Um, who knew, number one, that the industry was as big as it is,
Mhm.
and who knew that it would explode during a pandemic?
Right.
In the amount of people that are buying machines and
Mhm.
embroidering. And then, just trying to staff here as well as everywhere else.
I
Staffing
know.
is just such a hard thing.
It
Um,
is.
so education and sharing my education it's fun.
Well, I just have to laugh because I can still remember I got into the industry in 2006. And when I answered an ad for a director of marketing, and the ad just said, embroidery company looking for a director of marketing. So I was thinking like an embroid me or something. It
Oh
was going
yeah.
to be a little, I did think it was probably commercial, but I had no idea the scope of what commercial meant and
Hmm.
how big it was and how much of it there was. And so that still blows me away to this day.
Right.
And then when you add all the other disciplines that go along with, I'm like, this is, I mean, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and
Right.
most people don't have a clue.
They don't, and that's what's fun, I think, when we have new employees here and I sit down with
Hmm.
them and talk about the industry and the products. Somebody who starts here and it's their first week, their heads probably are this big, really, but they feel like they're this
Oh
big just
yeah,
because how much information we put in there and about everything that's going on, and we have a pretty good training
I
routine
imagine.
here. So we have machines that we embroider with, and they can touch. If they're willing, they're threading they're putting the thread in.
Hmm.
Fixing the breaks when they happen, and setting up a whole project or hooping. And I try to get them to touch all the products in some way.
Hmm.
Certainly, COVID has put a little bit of a halt on it, kind of double fold in that, just that we didn't have people together as much. We do now, but we didn't for a while. So training's kind of taken a little bit of a backseat.
Right.
Facebook Lives kind of picked up where that kind of left off. But now that we have a lot more employees, that we need
Hmm.
to do some more hands-on training is what's really helpful here. And I enjoy teaching and training. Um, I probably would have been a good teacher maybe, but I don't know that I'd want to do it every day. Um, the same students over and over.
Right.
I think probably the best thing about my job here is the diversity and the things that
Hmm.
I do. And it's, almost every day is different in what I do. I'm not just coming in, putting my 8 hours in and literally doing the same thing every day.
Yeah, I have that bug too. I don't like doing the same thing all the time. I need to have diversity. But Carolyn apparently would like to come and spend a day at Madeira. So she'd love to spend a day in your playhouse, she says. And she is one of the most creative embroiderers that I know. So she says definitely art, even if it's a widget. But Carolyn does the most gorgeous coats you have ever seen with
I'll have to
amazing
check 'em
embroidery.
out.
I'm trying to find, if I can find the purple coat that I want, I'm going to have her embroider it for me because she does beautiful work, but very amazingly creative stuff. Anyway, side note, but another thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and I realize this is the crappiest transition ever, and I apologize for that, but it's another thing. Like I said, I think you and I have a lot of the same personality traits. And one of the things that you sent me was that you were a self-proclaimed bossy person, and you try to reel that back and quiet that down sometimes. And I have a lot. I prefer to say I'm a leader, but I'm bossy. I'll go along with it. And I want to talk about that for a minute because there's a couple of aspects of this that I think are interesting. One is the term bossy, I guess. I kind of feel like that's almost a pejorative that people will use about women that are, oh, she's bossy, or she's, domineering, or she's pushy, or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
I want to talk about that for a second, because is that something that you've owned a little more as you've gotten older? Do you think you reeled it back more when you were younger than you do now?
I think so. I think, I consider it my opinions when I'm throwing
Mm-hmm.
something out. I I tend to take over sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when, we're having a meeting with different people. And then I'm like, well, sorry, I'm being so bossy, because it might not even be my project or things like that. But I
Right.
start giving my opinions and, what I think works. And I think to a point, definitely, when I was younger, I would barely beep, um, say a peep or anything. But now, and I think working in a place for over 20 years is certainly gives you a certain amount of comfort,
Right.
with the people, because we have a lot of people here that have been here a long time,
Right.
way longer than I've been here, and, or almost as long. I mean, so we've just been together for so long that,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think I've gained a lot of respect from the people that are here. And yeah, sometimes I just feel like I do go over the top a little bit more than I have a right to. But now I
Mm.
have over 4,500 products that I can be the boss of, so they'll have to listen to me.
So you can get your boss fix.
I'm gonna line them all up and give them a what for.
Give them all orders. This is what you're supposed to do. But the reason that I wanted to talk about this a little bit is because this is something that I've encountered a lot over my career as well. And I tend to be like you. If I'm in a meeting and somebody's not being efficient or not, I'm like, yeah, I'll just handle it. Get out of my way. I'm going to do it. And you can just sit there and I got it. We're good. And people who know me tend to understand it, and people
Mhm.
who don't kind of go, eh. But I also want to talk about, and I don't know if you encounter this, but I've encountered it, is there are people who discover that you are competent and you can manage things, and then suddenly you become the manager of everything
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that
because,
can happen.
it's,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's a female thing, in that people just kind of think, well, she'll take care of it, but you end up managing everything. And I haven't figured out a good way to handle that. So I'm going to ask you, have you figured out a good way to handle that yet?
I mean, I've definitely had things kind of put on me that, sometimes I almost like I want to take it on because I'm like, just give it to me because I know I can do it. After
Yeah.
sitting through 2 or 3 meetings and, the same thing that was supposed to happen didn't happen. I'm like, well, just give it to me. I'll do it. And then I ruffle a few little feathers and then it's done. It happens,
Hmm.
and sometimes, so, I mean, I used to worry about, how much, oh my God, is that person going to hate me? Well, guess what? We're
Hmm.
smiling and talking to each other the next day. Everything's fine. You don't have to worry about that. But sometimes I just do feel like I just want to take everything on. But you know, I do tend to think I'm a legend in my own mind, so I have to remember that I can't do it all. I have to back off a little bit and,
Well, and
let others have a chance.
that's the bit that I struggle with is I have that same thing where I'm like, just give it to me. I'll take care of it. It'll be done. We don't have to worry about it. And then I look at it and I have this huge plate of stuff that I need to do now. And I'm thinking, is this really, I feel sometimes, and I don't know if you feel this way as well, that I kind of think about myself last. I'm thinking about what needs to get done and all the stuff, and then I end up with this huge pile of tasks and
That's monotonous. Usually it's a
yes.
monotonous thing that's just not getting done. It's like, well, just give it to me. And I did take on a project just recently, and I'm like, oh yeah, I don't like doing this, but I'll do it now just to get it done. But somebody else has to do it afterwards. I don't want to keep doing it. So I helped, kind of get it caught up. For different reasons. It needed a little boost.
Yeah.
Kicked in. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't like doing data entry.
Oh yeah, I don't like doing this, but if it'll shut you all up, I'll do it anyway.
Then I get a little angry. Not angry, but a little snarky, I guess, at the end. I'm like, okay, I just want to get this done. But I know in the end I've helped and I've got it to the point where now it can be taken over and kept.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have to watch myself. And that was actually something that was kind of, they looked at me and they said, oh, Nancy could do this. She could do a good job with this. And I says, well, I'll do this part of it, but I just can't take it all on because, that's too much. And again, it's that monotony of doing the same thing over and over. That is just, it's not worthy of my time, really in the end. So
that's the thing that that's kind of obliquely where I was going a little bit, I guess, is that I think it's also important for people like us to learn to have boundaries and to learn to say, I'm not going to do it or no. Because, Carolyn said, and she makes a good point, the trick is not to let others slack off so they know you will do it eventually. That's true too. But I think because we know we can do it, we tend to think we should do it. And, sometimes we need to just kind of metaphorically zip our lips and not do it.
Yeah, and sometimes you do actually have to stand back and let something fail that I mean, people are trying their best, but sometimes it's not good enough. And you can't always be the hero that walks in and does everything.
Well, and I think women are taught too a lot of times that we're supposed to be the person who makes everything work and gets it all done so we tend to kind of just take on the mantle of I'm going to be the person that makes it all work, even when it's not necessarily our role to make it all work.
Yeah.
So,
well, it was a hard transition when I started working after being home for, 13, 14 years. I was a housewife. I babysat a little bit here and there, but just mostly I was at home while my husband was out working, and that my house was spotless, and the laundry is done, the dishes were done, the meal was on the table at 5:00 every night. When I went back to work, I couldn't stop at first. And I mean, it took quite a few months for me to say, hey, I can't do what I used to do. I'm at work for 40, 50 hours, well, 40 to 50 hours, by the time your lunches are in there. But Madeira was right down the street from where we moved recently, but the old building was literally a 5-minute walk to work. So I would go home for lunch, and I'm trying to do all the stuff I was doing when I was a stay-at-home mom. And it was a hard transition for me to let that go because, to a degree, I was a perfectionist, just because. I mean, I think that's a normal trait, I guess, for some women to have. And I had it, and I'm like, couldn't let it go. but it eventually, now my house isn't quite as clean as it used to be. So.
Well, I think that's a really interesting kind of subject to talk about for a minute, is because I think a lot of women run into this, especially this time of year with the holidays and everything, where you feel like you have to plan the perfect holiday, you have to make the perfect meals, you have to find the perfect gifts, and then you have to do your work, whatever that is, whether you're running your own business, or you're doing, you're working for somebody else, or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So you feel like and then there's also the laundry and the keeping the house clean and all the stuff that you normally do.
Yeah.
So I really think what gets missed in that a lot of times is taking care of yourself. You get so focused on taking care of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your favorite self-care things that you do? Let's talk about that for a minute. I know cats and kayaking.
Cats and kayaking, yes. I love my cats. I've always liked cats. I'm a little bit of a cat lady, but I do only have 2. So I'm in control, but that's probably only due to my husband's, limitations on, he grew up with dogs. I grew up with cats. And we didn't get our first cat until probably 10 years into our marriage. I'm like, oh, I got to get a cat. I got to get a cat. And he's like, no cats. And finally I got one. And we've had cats ever since. So yeah, I'm a self-proclaimed cat lady for sure. Got my cat mugs, my cat this, cat that. Enough about cats. So we're in the lakes region. We have a lot of lakes and mountains. So kayaking and mountain climbing is fun. My husband and I, so we have a lot of 4,000 footers here. I forget how many there are. There's quite a few, but we've probably done at least 4 to 5 of those.
Oh, wow.
And some of them were tremendously hard. We haven't actually done it lately. We've got to get back into it. And just the lakes around the lakes region in New Hampshire is just so beautiful. Our lakes are clear. You can see down to the bottom as long as it's not, a mile deep. And they're just so beautiful. So getting outside and enjoying that kind of stuff is certainly part of my self-care. I like to do my nails, do my hair. I would like to start getting some massages. That could certainly be, something that would, not that I have a lot of stress, but, who doesn't want a massage? I know I do.
Oh, we have several women in the Women in Garment Decoration group who are total massage advocates. So
yeah.
They keep telling me I need one, and I'm like, I don't know.
I'm willing. So if I do it, will you do it, Christine?
I'll think about it. I don't know. I'm a little weird about people I don't know touching me, but
I don't know, maybe a female massagist.
Yeah, maybe. But it's something to think about, definitely. But I think the point that I wanted to make is that we all need to make sure that we have things that we're doing for self-care, and especially during the holidays when there's so much going on, or during just the last couple of years with the pandemic and all the challenges that has brought.
For sure.
We got to look after ourselves.
I've cut back on what I do during the holidays. I love baking, and making holiday cookies is probably my favorite thing. And when I was younger, there would just be cookies all over my kitchen, and everybody looked forward to my Christmas cookies, and I love making them, but then I would go overboard, and I'm like, I would just literally be dead. So I just don't do as many anymore.
Well, if you have extras, I know where you can send them.
Okay.
Because I love Christmas cookies, but I don't bake because I have no restraint. So if I make cookies, I will eat the cookies, and I don't need to do that. So.
The nice thing, like working in an office with a lot of people, is you can bring.
Yeah,
you want to bake something, you can have a few and bring them on, and by 10 o'clock in the morning they're gone.
Yeah, when I worked outside the house, I did that a lot. My colleagues at Enmart benefited greatly from my baking, but now there's just me here.
Yeah.
It'd be dangerous if I made
Yeah.
cookies.
Yep.
Oh, but
Yep.
they'd be
Yeah.
good.
And I don't do like a big meal on Christmas or things like that anymore. I'd rather do the big meal on Thanksgiving and
Mm.
then Christmas, just because there's so much going on. I have two grandchildren as well. One is 10, or one is 11, my grandson, and my granddaughter is almost 5.
Oh, wow.
So it's so fun just doing presents with them.
Mhm.
We do presents for the older ones too, but it's just so fun to watch the kids have fun. And I want it to be more about that than food. So I just buy a bunch of appetizers and,
Mhm.
we have pigs in a blanket and scallops wrapped with bacon. I mean,
Mm.
sounds good, right?
I
Uh,
love scallops wrapped with bacon. I
me
could eat
too.
those all the time.
Yeah.
And I like what Cindy says here. Once we started our business 31 years ago, we stopped celebrating Christmas like years before. No time, customers first. We have a wonderful family dinner on Christmas, less stress for me. And she has, if I remember correctly, Cindy has 9 children. So, and they all have families now. So, I mean, their family Christmases must be enormous. So, I don't blame her for not doing a dinner. But
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's nice when you have that many children because hopefully they can take turns hosting and
there you
you
go.
can make one thing. I grew up with a family of 9 children, so um, I understand it from the children's side of it. Um,
I can't imagine. I have one sister,
yeah,
and that's I can't imagine having 8 siblings, but
yeah, you kind
I
of get
guess it is
lost,
what it is.
especially if you're the youngest. Your siblings are bringing you up more than your parents are by that time because
Yeah, I imagine
they're
because there's enough of
exhausted.
an age difference
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that
Um,
yeah, I can see that. Well, the last thing, because we're getting down to the end here, and unfortunately we can't do bonus time today because I have to be somewhere else at 4:30. But I did want to talk a little bit about Madeira, and I want to put up some of your banners here so everybody can, if you don't, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows Madeira, but if you don't, that's their website and their Facebook and their YouTube, where you can see many videos with
yeah.
Nancy in them.
And we're
But what I
looking for
want,
and we're looking for some ideas for some Facebook Lives. So
oh, are you?
shoot me an email if you're looking for something.
Cool.
It's hard to
There
come up
you go,
with
guys.
ideas.
Give her some ideas. That would be really a good plan. And that was Nancy, what was it again?
And
Uh,
Minnie,
and Minnie at MadeiraUSA.com. And if I was really like talented, I'd be putting a banner up so I could put that up on the screen, but I'm not going to try to type and do that at the same time because it just won't work. But
that's cool.
we'll make sure if anybody wants it, they can get hold of me and I will make sure that they can contact you. But what I wanted to talk about is Madeira does have a lovely education program. And I think education is so important for the industry, particularly for people that are new. So, has I guess the question I would ask is, has that been something, as far as you know, that Madeira's always been about since the beginning, or is this something that you helped build when you started working, or how is that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we've had people here that have been here a long time.
Mhm.
Until I started embroidery, me and one other lady started in like 2003. We had the machines here. Nobody was really running them. People that were running them were no longer there, and it just kind of went to the side for a little bit. And in the marketing department, we're like, well, we really need some stitch outs and some examples and things promotional wise. Why don't we just learn? Me and the graphic designer learned how to embroider, and so that we could create those. I took it a step further and started problem solving myself and just figuring out what didn't work, what worked, why it didn't work, and things like that. So I have a thirst for knowledge for sure,
Mhm.
and I sewed since I was 10 to 12 years old. My mother sewed, my grandmother sewed. My grandmother worked at a fabric store, for her career. My mother loved sewing. She would sew our clothes when she was young, and I did the same for mine. So I had that behind me, and it's, there's certainly a lot of similarities between
Right.
sewing and embroidery. One's a little prettier. Well, sometimes a lot prettier, when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
embroidery, but it's sewing, you can make some pretty cool things. Um, so I talked myself in a circle. I figured out where I was going. Um, what was your question again? Oh, the education.
I was asking about education, but I love what you said because I think, especially for thread companies, it's so important to have someone who's actually running the thread and sewing out the designs so that you
Yeah.
can actually understand what customers are asking you.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think, no, the education, I mean, people had knowledge, but it was more like head knowledge as opposed to,
Mm-hmm.
hands-on experience. So I definitely brought that to the table, and, it's evolved over the years for sure. And, definitely, um, I'd like to think I was a part of that.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit as the brand new product manager with, what'd you say, 4,500, 4,800,
Mhm.
whatever it is, products. Do
Somewhere
you
around
have
there.
a favorite product line or a favorite thing that's a favorite product that you really like?
Of course. Our Super Twist, metallic Super Twist thread is my
Oh,
favorite. It's a thicker, twisted, sparkly thread. And some of that head knowledge that was in people's heads was, based on, people saying this or reading that or whatever. And I was told, well, you have to use this thread if you don't want to run into any issues, or you can't use this thread
mm-hmm.
for that. Um, there's not a thread within our product line that I've not been able to run and run well. And even in stock designs, which, people are like, oh, you can only use 40 weight thread for that, or you have to use your
Mm-hmm.
thinner metallic thread for that. Sometimes I put it, yeah, I misassigned the needles on something that, it's like, oh my God, I never would have put Super Twist on a satin stitch. And I did. And I'm like, oh, well, it ran fine. So I loved being able to figure out the things that you can do with the thread.
Mm-hmm.
So Super Twist is just my favorite because it's so sparkly, and a little goes a long way, so you can just put a little bit here or there,
Mm-hmm.
and it just makes a big difference.
Well, and the one thing I know from my years being a supplier was that metallic gets such a bad rap a
Hmm.
lot of times. And I think not always undeservedly, because there are some metallics out there that are not great,
Yeah,
if we're being
yeah,
kind. But if you
for
get a
sure.
good one, oh, they're so fun. They're such a
They
great
are.
accent thread.
And if you just slow down, and think about what needs to be done for it, they'll run perfect. Just because your machine can run 1,500 stitches a minute doesn't mean you should run it that fast. Just like a car, my car could probably go 150 to 200. I'm not going to run it that fast because it runs better economically at a slower speed. And it's the same with embroidery. Yeah, we try to push the limit, but and that's fine with your rayon polyester thread or whatever. But once you
Mm,
start looking at the specialty ones, um, if I can run it at 400 stitches a minute and it doesn't break, I'm going to run it at 400 stitches a minute, as opposed to 750 stitches a minute and have to rethread it every 5 minutes.
right,
Because it's
right.
just
Well, and the other thing too is, if you're using a metallic, most likely, unless apparently you're Carolyn, because Carolyn says, I love metallic, just did an entire applique with it. But if you're not Carolyn, you're probably only using a small bit of metallic.
yes, yeah,
So, you can afford to run it a little slower because it's not the whole design in most cases, if
right.
you're not Carolyn.
And if you're,
Um,
but also, sometimes, your company doesn't really quite think that, if you're spending more time on something and it takes a little longer to do it, but the customer really wants it, then you can charge more.
yes.
I mean, you have to work whatever, if it's taking you longer to do something, then you need to charge for that. If
Well,
it's not your
specialty
fault.
threads, yeah, specialty threads add value,
Yeah,
definitely. And
they
I
do.
think that's a really, we could have, see, we are not doing bonus time today because we could have a whole conversation about pricing your embroidery, and we're not doing it. I'm going to have you back another time and we'll talk about it. But Jeff apparently is of the slam on the gas, let's get this thing stitched,
You
which
go,
makes
Jeff.
me laugh.
You go,
But
Jeff.
I love that if you're doing something special, charge an upcharge for it. I think that's a really important point that we don't want to miss. That yes, because I hear that sometimes too. People will tell me, which I never really thought of this before until just now, which is weird. But people will say, "Oh, the specialty threads are more expensive." Well, yeah, but if you use them, you can charge more for the thing that you're making.
Right, and you're not going to embroider. You're not going to use as much of them as you
No.
would, your everyday 40 weight.
So you can spend, and then you have something that you can use to accent a lot of pieces and upcharge for every piece that you use it in. Yeah. So you more than see, that's a piece of wisdom that I had never thought of until just now. And I don't know why, but I really love it, because that's, if I were still doing what I used to do, that would be all over the place now. But
right. But I mean, it's, I kind of missed my, a little can go a long way. So, yes. Start small with it. And you always want to be able to offer something that the person down the road doesn't.
Right. I agree with that. And Jeff says, here's my upcharge for bringing in specialty threads. People need to upcharge for things they spend out more on, which apparently everybody knew this except me, which kind of makes me laugh. But I think this is, and no, Jeff, there is no bonus time today because I have to be.
Let it go,
Jeff always advocates for bonus time, which I like bonus time too, and I wish we could, but like I said, I scheduled something else because I'm a dork. But
I think they have a side bet going on.
They might. Well, Jeff always advocates for bonus time, so I think they just like to see how long they can get me to talk, which we know from experience can be really long. But anyway, but we are getting to the end here. So I do want to just put up, if you want to see Nancy's work, you can go to Madeira USA. You can go to their Facebook page, or you can see her in a ton of videos on their YouTube channel. And I am going to cut us a little tiny bit short here just because I need to, like I said, be somewhere else at 4:30. But I appreciate, and Jeff says, I learned the upcharge lesson the hard way. Yeah, probably a lot of people do. But thank you so much. It was so fun to talk to you. And I definitely will talk to you about maybe coming back another time, because I'd like to explore the whole upcharge and pricing thing and maybe have a more embroidery-centered conversation.
Sure. Sounds like fun.
All right. Well, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Please join me next week. My guest will be Kate Plummer. She's a promo kitchen chef, and we're going to have a great talk. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nancy, so much for being here. And we'll see everybody next week.